Live from the House of LeMay Makeup and Dressing Room.
Here comes Amber. Stop what you're doing. Here comes Amber. She's just doing what she can. Here comes Amber. Cue the spotlight. Here comes Amber with 2 drinks in her hand. The matriarch of fashion, secrets to her glasses, you can't look away. Ask her, does she do it? There's really nothing to it. She's got that feminine game. If you have a party, or if you're feeling naughty, call up the House of LeMay. Here comes your favorite gal. Here comes your queen. Here comes your talk of the town. And we're live tonight. The music starts playing. It's time for cabareting on Amber Live tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn off all cell phones and get ready for your host, Amber LeMay.
A United States Senator representing the state of Tennessee, Marcia, you can call me Karen, Blackburn, offered a solution to school shootings. On Fox TV, she said that grandparents could join a force of armed military vets and retired police officers to protect schools from shootings. Yes, Granny, get your gun! Ron DeSantis of Florida signed SB 1580, which allows healthcare providers and insurance companies to deny care or reimbursement for care if it opposes their ethical beliefs. Stop him. Stop them. We must call them for the bigots they are. In 2024, we must follow the advice of the League of Drag Queen Voters. Don't blow it. Vote.
Hey, let's start with Blockbuster. Everybody's familiar with this from 1985 to 2010. And they transitioned into DVDs through the mail, but they didn't really modernize into the future of media, and so it failed. Second up is the Minitel, which is this predated the internet. This is the French version of the internet. They made 9 million of these that's privately used for stock trading and, of course, porn. And it is said that this put France a decade behind in accessing the internet.
Hello, Amber LeMay here, welcoming you to another episode of Amber Live. But first, I want you to like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much. Now, what do a traitor, a liar, and a cover girl have in common? They're all a part of this week's news briefs. For all of you lonely ivermectin lovers out there, disgraced former General Mike Flynn is here to help. Flynn, who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russians, is a founding member of the For the Pure, a dating and community site for anti-vaxxers. For those who are blissfully unaware, anti-vaxxers proudly refer to themselves as purebloods, a term you may know from Harry Potter. The 4 in the For the Pure stands for mind, body, soul, and spirit. They claim For the Pure is an online community of health-conscious, COVID-19 unvaccinated people who can find curated news, important health information, like-minded friendships, search for a date, find quality service providers, blood donors, fertility options, jobs, resumes, events, retreats, conferences, and seminars with some of the biggest experts in the world. Fertility options? Quality service providers? Like-minded friendships? Where do I sign up? You could become a monthly member for $19.95 a month or a founding member for a mere $2,500 a year. The site supposedly will launch on June 5th. We'll see. Rudy, formerly known as America's mayor, Rudolph William Louis Giuliani, was accused this week of making comments about freaking Arabs and Jews, and then in one instance talked about Jewish men and implied their penises were inferior due to natural selection. In a complaint filed by a former aide, Rudy was accused of forcing her to have oral and vaginal sex, discussed his interest in BDSM, calling her the B and C words, as well as continually eating Viagra and chasing them down with alcohol all day, all night. There's a lot more, but I can't. You're welcome. And can we give a big shout out to Martha Stewart at Sports Illustrated? This week, the magazine showed the cover of their annual swimsuit edition, and, yep, 81-year-old Martha Stewart was their cover girl. Martha says, I think that all of us should think about good living, successful living, and not about aging. The whole aging thing is so boring. Stewart said she did take a few extra steps to get cover ready. I didn't starve myself, but I didn't eat any bread or pasta for a couple months. I went to Pilates every other day. I live a clean life anyway, good diet and good exercises and healthy skincare and all of that stuff, but it was kind of fun. You go, girl. And that's this week's news briefs. All right, it's time for Russell. Come on in, Russell.
Hey, Amber, how are you this week?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm looking forward to tonight's show, that's for sure.
Oh, it's a great one.
and what's the best way for people to watch the show?
Well, there are so many ways for people to watch, but the best way is always on YouTube. So we want you to go over to youtube.com/AmberLive and watch there. And part of that is because once you're there, it's in full HD and all your friends are probably there in the chat room, so you can chat. Amber will be there to chat with you. I'll be there. Lots of people chatting. So come on over to YouTube. And then don't forget, as you saw on that slide, we've got TikToks, Instagrams, and lots of other things to do with Amber. So get out there and enjoy the Amber Live experience.
And don't be shy about commenting, because we love to hear comments.
We do. Just throughout the show, let us know what you think.
Please do. And what else do we want them to do, Russell?
Well, we'd like them to join the Bustiers because we love our Bustiers, and you can see that wonderful list we have going there. And we got a new couple of Bustiers from Shar and Asako Azumi Todd. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I did my best. And they are old friends of Amber, I believe. So we thank them, and we thank all our Bustiers because they're the ones who keep this show going. And if you look there, you can see that Venmo art at RJD Pro that you can use to become a Bustier, or go to our wonderful website, look for amberlive.tv and look for the donate button there if you'd like to use a credit card. So again, the easy way is that Venmo at RJD Pro, or pop on over to amberlive.tv and just look for the donate button and you can be a Bustier.
Yeah, Sharon Asako from Sacramento, California. Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. All right, Russell. Tell us about tonight's guest.
Oh, my goodness. Do we have guests tonight? And they have some incredible stories. They have been all across the country and in a couple of different ways. We have Jessica Watkins coming on tonight, who is a comedian, and she wanted to get some attention for herself. And so she decided to go on a comedy tour. Well, she did it the hard way. She walked from Delaware to California with stops along the way doing her comedy show. I think it took her 8 months. It's pretty amazing. And then after her, we have Brian Dunn, who is just a fantastic actor who has been acting for 4 decades. That's like longer than Amber, I think.
He's one of those actors you see on like Law and Order and go, God, what other show is he in? I've seen him in a lot of shows and movies and fun conversation.
If you're a fan of Hallmark movies, he was in one of those last year. So
the Rockettes.
With the Rockettes, he has a lot to talk about.
Yes.
So
all right. And also, this is a great show. We've got 2 more weeks of great shows coming up. Next week we've got Harpy Daniels, and the following week it's our Pride episode. So there's a lot coming up on Amber Live. But let's get on with tonight's show and that first interview. Born and raised in East Nashville, Tennessee, Jessica Watkins trained as an actor at the American Academy of Dramatics in Los Angeles before moving to New York City in 2009 to pursue stand-up comedy. Looking for an adventure and stage time, Watkins hit the road in 2014 on a walking stand-up tour. Her feature-length docu-comedy, Jessica Watkins Specialish, of which she shot, wrote, directed, and produced, follows the walk across America and lasted 8 months, spanning from Delaware to California, where she performed stand-up comedy and lived off the generosity of strangers. Named exceptional by the New York Times and 11th Best Comedy Special of 2021 by Paste Magazine, Specialish is now available on all streaming and on-demand platforms. And here's a trailer of it right now.
When people ask what you do, you say I'm a stand-up comedian, but what you know is that you're a waitress.
Approximately 12 people a year attempt to walk across America, like half of them make it. They don't die. They give up or they find themselves or whatever.
In this era, you have to have more than just comedy. You need something to get noticed. I'm gonna start walking across America. Everything's fine. I've been training.
We're actually learning this the day of.
I mean, I'm assuming she's camped before.
Well, that's what I would assume.
In the studio with us right now, Jessica Watkins, who is walking across America, is bringing awareness to herself.
Myself. Hopefully I won't die and be seen on the side of the street honk and the girl with the neon vest pushing a cart down the road.
Aren't you afraid to be on the road?
I can't let fear of like the unknown stop me from doing things, you know?
I know, shocker, we do it. Women are walking these days, sometimes even alone.
Be careful.
I will.
Because pretty girls walking.
It's not exactly the vision that I had.
I'm a little nervous. I didn't think I was going to make it to the town I was going to by the time it got dark.
Maybe I could have practiced one time with the cart full of things.
Gotta build a set. Let's build a set. Got nothing but time. You can do this.
This is never going to end.
These jokes will kill someday when they have a real punchline.
I told myself if I wasn't making money in the biz with between 6 months and a year after graduating from school, I would move on. Look at me now.
The American Patriot is a cool thing. They're like, God bless America, greatest country the world's ever known. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm walking across it. And then they're like, I would not do that.
Can't wait to talk to Jessica Watkins. Jessica, come on in.
Hello.
Hello there, Jessica. So much to talk about. Tell me about growing up in Tennessee. What prompted you to go into comedy from Tennessee?
Well, you know, you got to laugh at things. You know, Nashville's a pretty cool town, and that's where I grew up. And there's the whole country music scene there, but I wasn't, you know, my grandfather moved there to be a country music songwriter. So he had that kind of like, you know, passion of getting out of his small town, and he moved to the big city of Nashville. And I think I like to think that that's kind of like where I got my ambition to leave Nashville when I moved to California to go to acting school. But I think really it was just attention. Like I just wanted attention, and making people laugh seems like, you know, you really get the hook and get the attention. So
what were you doing in Tennessee before you moved to California?
Well, I moved to California when I was 18. So I was in school, you know, but I grew up going, you know, doing theater, and I was played sports, and, you know, was just like a pretty active kid. And then, yeah, I just really felt like moving out of Tennessee, I got accepted into acting school in LA. I'd been there one other time. You know, I hadn't really traveled outside of Tennessee, but I made the move to California.
What did your family think about that at only 18?
Yeah, you know, they have always been very supportive. You know, they knew that I was kind of going to do it one way or another. And so they could either support me in that or, you know, and help me to, you know, succeed. And I think that, or they could, you know, whatever the alternative to that is. So I think that they, you know, they decided to, though it wasn't probably like the greatest idea to them. And of course, they would have rather me just stayed home and nested with them forever. They knew that it was like something that I really wanted. So they've always been really good about supporting me. And yeah, that's something I can be very thankful for.
Tell me about that school you attended.
Yeah, so it's in the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. It's like a proper acting conservatory, and kind of going through that made me realize that I wasn't like a leading lady, and I still really loved getting a laugh and loved character acting. And that's more, you know, I started auditioning in LA, and through that process, I really got into writing for myself. And that's when I started performing, and I did stand up for the first time. And I was like, just really taken by that. You didn't have to depend on anyone else. You didn't have to get cast by someone, you know, you were just doing your own thing. And I really enjoyed that. And again, you're the only person, so you get all the attention. So
how old were you when you started stand up?
it was about 4 years out of school. So I was like 22 maybe. And I had just started doing stand-up before I decided to move to New York because it seemed like, New York City, it's the iconic stand-up capital of the world. So
how did you get the gumption to go from California to New York? I know you said was the Comedy Central of the world, but still, that's a long ways.
Yeah, I don't know. Like when I look back, there's some big decisions I've made in my life. And I think I just have like a trust in the unknown, whether it's naively or not. I've just really always liked change and adventure. And I feel like when you put yourself in a new environment, you can really change who you are in a way and recreate yourself. And I've always enjoyed making those kind of big changes in my life, I guess, because it's like a reset,
How did you land in New York? What was your first experiences there?
Oh my gosh. So the night before I moved to New York, I was going to stay with a friend in Brooklyn until I found a place. And I went bowling with a bunch of friends in LA. And this friend of a friend said, oh, you should just stay in my apartment. I'm going to be doing this. He was an actor. And he's like, I'm going to be doing this play for a few months. You should just stay in my apartment and pay me whatever you can afford. And the apartment was in Soho on Prince Street. But I didn't know anything about New York. I'd only been there one other time before. So I literally got to Prince Street in Soho and was like, this is scary. I was like, New York is so different from LA, if you don't know it, you're just like, I don't know. And now when I go there, I'm like, this is like the nicest part of New York City to live in. But so I got really, really lucky with that experience. Yes. And then I stayed with them. Was able to stay in that apartment for a few months. And it was actually right around the corner from the Comedy Cellar, which happens to be one of the best places to see stand-up comedy. And at the time they had this deal where if you gave them your email address, you got they would let you in for free. So I would just create a different email address like every other day. And I would go and watch stand-up for free and, not even realizing that I was seeing, just some of the best stand-up that you can see. And that was kind of my first stepping into the stand-up world in New York City.
Who were some of those people you saw? Do you remember some of are they big stars now?
Yeah, there were a lot. Now I can't articulate who they were, but it's like all the faces that you see that are still performing there, just all of those, whoever was big in that, 15 years ago that you saw on TV, it's like that seemed to be where they would come late at night,
In that trailer, it said every stand-up is a waitress. So were you waitressing at the time as well?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I got a job at a pizza place when I first moved there. And I worked on and off there for like a decade. So I made some of my best friends there. And I met people that helped to fund my comedy special. And I think I was actually realizing that I think it's the only job that I've applied to in New York City, like the only job like that. And then I got it and I just stayed working there for a very long time.
What were some of your first gigs in New York?
Well, I started hosting an open mic at Eastville Comedy Club. And that's where I started, making friends and sort of came up with comedians. And, it's just such I feel like moving from LA to New York, I had just started doing stand-up, and New York City is a really interesting place for you to just be starting to do stand-up. It's tough. And so it's hard to find your way and your footing. And there's so many different worlds that you can exist in. And so I even, I still feel like now I'm just still exploring, and I meet people that I'm like, how come I've never met you and you're a comic in New York, so many people. So, yeah.
I mean, you moved from Tennessee to LA to New York, and then you decide, I'm going to walk across the country.
Yeah.
How did that idea evolve?
So when I lived in LA, I met this guy named Aaron Huey, who's an amazing photographer. And when I met him, he was doing a Nat Geo thing, and we went to play like a there's this three-par golf course in Los Feliz in LA, and we met some friends there and we were going to play, and he played the whole game with a putter, and he wore these gold shoes, and he's just this really like kind of strange character. And then I heard that he had walked across America, and this was like the craziest idea. It was so interesting to me. And we talked about it. He ended up becoming a friend, but the idea just kind of, I never really thought it was something I would do, but the idea just kind of stuck around. And then moving to New York, it's, such a walking city. And actually where I lived in Alphabet City and where I worked at that pizza shop, it was like a half-hour walk. And I would just walk every day. And during that time, really, I don't know, like walking became inspiring to me. It was right around the time when people were doing crowdfunding. So Kickstarter was just starting, and GoFundMe and those kind of things. So I felt like I wanted to try and fund my own project. And in order to get people to give you money, you need like a great idea. And this like walking kept coming up. And so I'm walking. I was thinking maybe I'd walk to Tennessee, maybe I'd walk through Tennessee. And then at that point, it's like, well, I might as well just do the whole country if I'm going to do that. And so it just sort of started as this seed, and then, evolved into Specialish, which it took me a very long time from the inception of the idea to making the film, which came out in 2021, and the walk was in 2014. So even just that time period of actually making the film, recording my special where I sort of tell the story of the walk, and that's what makes the documentary. The whole process was just such a huge learning experience. And it was just, like the snowball effect.
When you set out, were you planning on documenting it for a film?
Yeah, that was part of the Kickstarter. So I did do a Kickstarter. I was able to raise, in total, I raised over $30,000 for the project.
Whoa.
And then luckily got a production company who helped fund the special that I filmed, and the film Glasshouse Productions helped with that. But the film, the other part of the Kickstartering was people like a tangible thing, so it seemed only natural, if I'm going to be on the road, like I should be documenting what I'm doing. And then I could give the people that donated something for, like a tangible thing. And so that's where the idea of the film came up. And luckily I had a really good friend, Lorena at the time, who was a filmmaker, and she kind of like whipped me into shape of like, this is what you would need. And, this is how you would do it. And I was, I reached out to a camera company. I got a free camera, and then I did like a crash course, just had someone, I never shot anything before. I had someone show me how to use it. And then Lorena showed me all the technical things. And so I would film on the walk, and I would send her footage back. She would organize it and then resend the drives to me. And we were just always kind of circulating this footage. And by the end of the trip, there's, over 300 hours of footage that I gathered. A lot of it just meaningless, silent footage of me on the side of the road somewhere. But in the end, there was all this footage, and I decided to take that. And the idea was pretty much very similar to my original idea. Originally, it was that you would sort of see the evolution of a joke. So, you would be able to see me trying it out on the road, and then the special would be this sort of polished end product. And I think in a way that is how the documentary turned out, but it's way, way more of a personal story than a stand-up special even. It really, like, I had to, when you do something like that, it's so intense, like emotionally, physically, you're not like writing like these, crazy jokes, it's not like the jokes are flowing. I don't know what I thought, that trees and open highways was going to be like really inspirational for writing jokes. But it ended up being a very personal story, and just really exploring why the hell I would do something like that. And probably, to go back and answer your questions, why I moved from Nashville to LA and from LA to New York. And it really like made me look at that and explore those ideas.
What was your scariest moment throughout the journey?
There were a lot of scary moments. Really the scariest moments were just the physical danger of walking on highways. And some roads were beautiful and you'd have an amazing moment where you're like, I'm walking through the desert and it's just beautiful and no one's around, and I'm like, this is what I envisioned for the walk. But the majority of it was, we don't live in a very walkable country, and getting in and out of cities was very sketchy, like with just vehicles. So I would be walking head on into traffic, and if the road ended, if the sidewalk ended, then it ended. There was nothing I could do about that, and that was scary. So, and seeing people, like, you could see that they were on their phones or distracted, like that you couldn't make eye contact with someone. That was, I feel like there were a lot of brushes and that felt very close calls in that way. And just the trusting of the unknown, like, being in the middle of nowhere, especially when you get to the middle of the country, and you have no choice. Like, you have to keep going, and you don't know where you're going to stay, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know who you're going to meet next, but you have to keep going. And those were scary moments, but it was also the most, well, as you see in the film, that's when the most serendipitous things would happen. Just, after those scary moments and I pushed through, something would happen that made you feel like, that, like there's a reason for this, like there's a purpose or a reward, or I don't know even how to, it was like there were so many moments like that really felt like somehow the universe was just kind of looking out for me, after pushing through some tough stuff. And yeah, those things are really cool.
Throughout the journey, you met hundreds, possibly thousands of people. Are you keeping in touch with any of them?
Oh yeah, I am. I keep in touch with a lot of them. I mean, there's something about that experience that you can just meet someone for an afternoon. And because I was being so vulnerable, I felt like people would be vulnerable with me. And they would tell me things, like they would tell me secrets, and they would tell me about themselves, and they would really be, they would tell me about their lives, or about, I think, doing something like that. Also, it's like people tell you about the thing that they always wanted to do, that maybe they couldn't, or maybe they still want to, or maybe it inspired them down the road to do the crazy thing that they always wanted to do, or just, follow through on that. I mean, that idea, that spark of an idea that you have. Because like I said, it took so long for me to make this happen. And there were so many roadblocks, but I just kept pushing through. And so, yeah, I met a lot of, thank goodness, like social media was around. Instagram had just pretty much started when I started the walk. And so, yeah, I still like keep touch with a lot of people through social media. Actually, this one guy I met, he helped me because I ended up injuring my knee, which you see at the beginning of the film. And I was stuck at this campground in Delaware for a few days. And he came and would bring me, he got word that I was there from the park ranger, and because he used to walk in this park. And so he brought me food for like 3 or 4 days. We exchanged emails, and that was right around Easter. So every Easter I get an email from him just checking in to see how I'm doing. And he sends me a picture of the campground that I was at to tell me if someone's staying there, and though, I don't know, just seeing people, I'm watching someone's kid, like, I'm like, oh my God, they're graduating high school. When I met them, they were just a kid, I mean, it's dozens and dozens of long lasting relationships.
Well, that's just fascinating. I love your perseverance. I just love that. What are you doing now?
Well, as I was showing you guys earlier, I do have this baby on the way. So that's a big thing I have going on. Another big adventure that I'm very excited about. So I'm nearing the end with that. And I'm kind of like focusing into this new mode of knowing that, I don't know how inspiring and what's going to come out of the baby, but I've been just trying to get up doing stand-up, been writing a lot of new material based on this, and I just feel like I'm kind of going into this next stage of life where things are changing, and I don't really know what's next. So I'm hoping to spend the next few months nesting with my baby, and then I'd love to continue producing projects, which is what I've been doing for the last few years, and recording another special soon.
Found you on the website Queerty. You were listed as a prominent LGBTQ plus comedian. How does that affect your comedy?
Especially on the walk, you're like, I'm doing stand-up, talking openly about myself, telling questionable jokes about myself, and you're in the South or in the middle of America, and there's a fear element there, and then after that show, I'm just walking on the side of the road, or maybe the next day, and there was always sort of a fear in the back of my mind about that. And again, this was 9 years ago that I did the walk, but I was so pleasantly surprised in the places I went to. And maybe it's because when people come to see comedy, they are just coming with a more open mind. But I really felt like people were receptive and let themselves laugh, even if maybe it was outside of their comfort zone. And that was something that felt really rewarding to me. And in the film, I just decided to put everything, about myself and the jokes that I was telling about being queer or abortion or whatever it might be, political things. I really put it all out there in the documentary, and I just feel really proud. And I've had pretty great feedback with it. So yeah.
Today, there's a lot of animosity towards the drag, the gay, the queer community. Do you feel any of that anytime you're out today?
Yeah, I just find it so, again, like thinking about the South, just because I'm from there. So I often, that's just where I come from, is like this comparison, especially when it comes to drag. It's so specific of a thing for people to be upset about. It just seems quite ridiculous. And then I think about, many ways that people costume themselves in the South, whether it's like child beauty pageants or, yes, uber masculine, whatever the hell they're doing. I don't know. It just seems so, so interesting. The impetus on it is just bizarre to me, really. Yeah, especially with what's specifically happening in Tennessee. When I was there, I guess it was around Thanksgiving, actually. It was right before they were passing this anti-drag bills. And in one day I saw 3 drag shows. One was like a brunch, and then there was like a midday, and then and it was, every person that comes to the show has a smile on their face. They're having a great time. It's so uplifting. Who is not having an amazing time at a drag show? And it just is so clear that the people against it have either, never experienced it or just are suppressing something within themselves.
How true. How true. Jessica Watkins, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's fascinating. And I said, I love your perseverance. You just get up and do stuff, whether it be moving across country a couple times, walking across country, or having a baby. That has to be one of the scariest things.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to you and your baby and your future projects. Projects. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amber.
Can you imagine walking across the country? Wow. Russell, come on in.
Hey, oh my goodness. I wonder how many pairs of shoes she went through on that trek.
Damn it, I didn't ask that question.
Maybe if she's watching, she can type in the comments and let us know how many shoes she wore. Can you imagine how many heels you'd have gone through?
Oh my good. Well, I wouldn't have worn heels very long, that's for sure. Sensible shoes for me.
All right. Well, we do have a lot more to come tonight. We still have Brian Dunn coming up. We've got some altercations. We've got Amber's going to rant again because
Yes, I am.
Loves to do that. And of course, Rocco's stopping in. So there's just a ton to come. But to get us there, I want to make sure I give one more shout out to those bustiers. Thank them all. It's so important. And you can join the bustiers using that Venmo at RJD Pro, or go to amberlive.tv and look for the donate button. Or if you're already a bustier and you'd like to up your donation, please feel free. Every little bit helps because it's really important.
Yes, please, up yours. Yes.
All right. Well, now let's find out what Amber has to say in her altercations.
In this week's altercations, we again shine light that it is not the drag queens who are grooming children, it's members of the religious community. French Catholic priests have been issued scannable ID cards so people can tell which ones are accused pedophiles. The French Bishops' Conference has promised that all 18,000 priests and deacons across the country will receive their QR codes by the end of the year. Bishops have already received them. Scanning the QR code brings up color-coded information. If a certain priest's color is red, you may want to keep your child away from them, or any other color if you ask me. Meanwhile, in Texas, Michael Anthony Romero, a former employee of a Magnolia church, reportedly turned himself in and confessed to inappropriate behavior with adolescents during his time at the ministry. Court documents state that he was charged with indecency of a child involving sexual contact. The age of the victims ranged between 14 and 16 years old and were all reportedly young men. Investigators say 2 of the 5 victims stated that they remember him performing these acts on them during church events, which were sometimes held at his home. And last week, we told you about Reverend Michael Jude Zacharias, who was on trial in Ohio. Well, he was found guilty of 5 counts of sex trafficking, 2 of which involved victims who were minors. Many states are banning children from attending drag shows for fear of... I really don't know what. I'm not saying there has never been a drag queen charged with illegal activities, but the number of church folk is a whole lot higher. And that's this week's altercations. And now our interview with Michael Brian Dunn. Michael Brian Dunn is a New York City-based actor whose career has spanned 4 decades and includes Broadway, off-Broadway, national and international tours, countless regional theater jobs across the country, as well as film and television. Along with his husband, Kurt, they coach young performers in a group called Broadway Kids Audition. Here's a reel of some of Michael's work.
All right, ladies, let's shake some of that rust off, shall we? Basic eye-high kick line, starting on your stage right angle. And a 5, 6, 7, 8, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a 1. You have exactly 78 seconds to change from wooden soldier costume to Times Square. And that is the transition that we are going to work on for the rest of the day. Go.
All right, ladies.
Well, almost all of you made it. Now just try it without looking like you were run over by Santa's sleigh.
Well, I don't want to interrupt our conversation. They just met. I can't imagine Dorothy running off with Ivan Cousins.
It's not a wasting my
Bien aimé, dearly beloved.
fascinating. Michael, come on in.
Hi, Amber.
Oh my goodness, what a work you have done. It's amazing. And we'll get into a lot of that. But first, I want to find out, how did you get the bug? Where did you grow up and how did your career start?
Oh, thanks, Amber, for asking and being interested. It's so nice to be here. I grew up in Utica, New York, which is where I am now. Strangely enough, since COVID, I'm up here taking care of my beautiful, wonderful 96-year-old mom. But I go back and forth to New York. I got the bug here. I started studying early when I was in high school, grade school, really, and I got brave enough. I'm from a huge family of 10. I have 10 brothers and sisters. I'm 8 down. So by the time it got to me, my parents were like, "Go do something different." Great. They were very supportive and still are.
I think the operative word there is go.
Go. So I joke with everybody. There are 10 of us, and for our graduation from high school, for our gifts, we would get a suitcase. Happy graduation. Here's a suitcase. Goodbye. We need your room. No more room in this house.
So after high school, what happened?
I studied first. I joined a theater company in Albany, New York called the Empire State Youth Theater Institute, which kind of gave me a taste of what professional theater was. We toured around the state and took workshops into schools. And then from there, I auditioned for my colleges. That was sort of a year off for me. Auditioned for all sorts of colleges. And ended up going to Boston Conservatory of Music, where I stayed for, I was there for 2 years. And then from there, I got the bug really hit, and I just couldn't wait to get to New York City. So I was very young. I was 19, 20 years old, and off I went to New York City. Just moved everything into New York, had an apartment, and started auditioning. I worked at, for those of you who know, like old New York, I worked at Phoebe's restaurant on the corner of the Bowery and 4th Street, which was about the only place in the East Village then. This is back in like 1980, and I met there a playwright named Robert Patrick. Robert Patrick he's just passed away, actually. He wrote Kennedy's Children on Broadway. He was one of the foremost gay playwrights in New York, and who was openly gay and wrote gay content. Kennedy's Children was a play that was very successful on Broadway for him, and he was remounting it in New York. And he met me there in the bar. I was waiting on him, and he gave me this part, and that kind of started off my career in New York. And from there was a lot of waiting on tables. There was a lot of I demonstrated toys at FAO Schwartz. I cleaned out restaurant kitchens after they closed at 3:00 in the morning. I sold newspapers by the phone. I took surveys through the New York Times for the CBS Evening News. I did everything until I could kind of step away, and work became more regular, and I was able to kind of get my footing in the door. And it was a typical kind of route that most actors get and do while they're in New York. I hit the streets. They were different times then, but it was still the same thing. You just had to struggle and be persistent and never give up and get crushed and call home and cry and say, "I can't do this anymore," and go back and do it again. My first Broadway show I got was a show called Baby, written by Richard Maltby and David Shire. I was called in for that. I was a replacement towards the end of the run, and it was incredibly exciting. It was, it was a musical that I knew and loved, and I played the young couple with Liz Calloway. It was opposite Liz Calloway, if people know their great musical theater voices, one of the best, and she is still got that sublime voice that is so distinctive. And so that was my very exciting Broadway debut. And I went on. I did Amadeus, a national tour of Amadeus, with Mark Hamill, back before he was while he was doing Star Wars. I think he was just about to do Return of the Jedi. So I toured with him. That was also very exciting. Wonderful guy. And such a whole new presence now, doesn't he have this whole great? He's got Twitter following that he's hilarious, and he always was, but it's just so cool to have experienced what he was like. And he was always a movie star as far as, he was very successful then, but just to see him reinvent himself along the way is really cool and inspiring to see. It's one of the neat things about kind of sticking around at the table this long. You get to see people's progressions, and so therefore you kind of say, well, what's my progression and how do I fit into that progression as well? And I suppose I have one, but sometimes it's better for other people to decide that and see that. So I kept working. I did several, many Broadway shows, and in between you get these great tours that go out, or you'll get a sit down production that happens in Cincinnati or Louisville. One of my favorites long time ago in my earlier days was doing one of the first regional productions of Little Shop of Horrors, playing Seymour. And that, I mean, come on, that was just magical and wonderful to do at Actors Theater of Louisville. And so basically that's kind of it. Some of my Broadway contracts were short. Some of them were 2 years. I did Guys and Dolls on Broadway, the Jerry Zaks version, directed by Jerry Zaks. With
what part did you
I was okay. Oh my God. I was the understudy to Nicely and Benny, and I had to swing 6 of the guys in the ensemble.
Ooh.
So I would wake up every morning with knots in my stomach saying, what am I going to do today? And in a long run,
I love Guys and Dolls. I love Guys and Dolls.
I do too. Oh my goodness. And the audience loved it too. But so I did everything in that show. It was, it was very challenging, very challenging. I also
you got to New York in the early 80s. We know what was going. We know, so that was right at the beginning of AIDS. And how was living in New York during that time?
It was so scary. So, but there was also this weird kind of denial. I remember reading, and this will really give a good, for those younger people that don't know what it was like, that don't. It was frightening, but we didn't know what the magnitude was. But we did know there was a newspaper called The Native, and that was the gay newspaper that was printed. And in The Native, they would print how many people had reported coming down with AIDS, were infected by AIDS, and they did it by zip code. They would classify it by zip code and age. And of course, the major zip code at that point was 10014, which was down in Greenwich Village. And the age range was like 25 to 33 or something like that. I don't know if I'm correct. So in a lot of my mind and like a lot of people's minds, it was like, well, don't sleep with anyone that's 25 and over and lives in Greenwich Village and you'll be fine. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, but it was scary. And then, you'd start to have you'd see people get sick. And you weren't allowed to ever have, I remember I had a rash on my leg, and I thought that this is it. I'm a goner. It was a sunburn that was flaking, but I literally, that's what we just lived in constant fear. And I'm lucky to be a survivor. I don't know how I did it with everybody around me, passing around. Yeah. So I think it's important, especially today, that we remind people of what it was like then, and having gone through COVID, and what it's been like in COVID, and how these people don't want a vaccine. And I'm like, if you had lived, can you imagine if they had a vaccine for AIDS 6 months after it was found, So,
but that's why I asked, because I know we have to keep bringing those stories up for the next generation. So you went from theater. What was your first TV or movie gig?
My first one, I think, was I did a lot of commercials when I was younger. A lot of voiceovers and commercials. So I had those, and I was in the age range of being very marketable. And then I wasn't so marketable for that. And then I went through a different stage. And then I was in a stage when I started to book some of the Law and Orders. One that you saw, which was really fun because you go on those and it's just a day on, and you absolutely have to know your stuff because there's no time. There's no time to explore. You got to hit your mark, say your line, and get out. Also there it was always very generous and kind experiences that I had. So I did a couple of them. The big one and the really fun one, and it just made me grin and so love it when you played the Julie and Julia tape. That was a magical time. It was Nora Ephron directing, who's of course passed away. Meryl Streep. I mean, I was hanging out with Meryl Streep. I mean, come on, that was kick me, slap me, pinch me. I mean, it was incredible. And I married Jane Lynch. So that was Jane Lynch who played off the Height. And I can't say enough about Jane Lynch. We still keep in touch, and she is one of the most generous performers you will ever meet. And I defy you to talk to anyone that won't say those exact words. She's a real special person, and I just adore her. And Stanley Tucci was great. So that was just an incredible time of being on that set. It was a big budget. They had a French chef, cooking our lunches, and it was it's pretty magical.
How long were you on the set for that?
I was contracted for 2 weeks, but they would call me when they needed me. So my role wasn't huge, but I was there, and there were definitely moments that I had the plot. I was part of the plot, which was exciting. But it was about 2 weeks. And the same with this Hallmark film that I just did. This was just this past Christmas, so probably Hallmark movies were, but Christmas movies are crazy.
Yeah, tell us about that experience. How did you audition for the gig? Did they just go through and they find you? How do you get on a Hallmark special?
This was amazing. Now in the time of since COVID, now all of us actors, and this is how you started your show too, I think, is in COVID, we set up our cameras. I have a studio, a makeshift studio in my basement. I got the audition from my agent, and I had the two. They sent a couple of scenes over that I had to memorize and learn, and I did a self tape down in front of the camera. My husband Kurt helped me set up the shots and do the lines, and we sent it in. And about 2 weeks later, I didn't have a meet and greet. I didn't have a meeting with the director. I booked it off one self tape, which is remarkable. And then the ball started rolling from there. I was just delighted. And we filmed it in Radio City Music Hall with the Rockettes. It was a huge, huge production. And I got to direct and choreograph the Rockettes. I mean,
well, how about just being on that stage? Have you been on that stage before?
I have. I hadn't performed on it, but I had visited and been through on different events. It's enormous, and for this they took away every single piece of scenery, so it was bare from the walls to the back wall to the front wall, and it was incredible to be there and to see how many hundreds of people it takes to make a film. You have this one small shot of a person, like this, and there are literally 200 people behind you, making it work. So it's a fascinating experience, and the Rockettes couldn't have been more lovely to work with. It was interesting, I had to count them into their famous kick line at a 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, I dance, I'm a dancer. I'm not a choreographer. And you cannot start that count too fast or too slow. Those poor women will die. They're doing the famous kick. It's got to be the right tempo, and the cameras are rolling. So we decided that the dance captain who was lined up in the line, she would gently tap the tempo on her thigh before I started. So when the cameras rolled, I could just kind of get my little cheat sheet going. And 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1. So that's how, we had a little trick for me so that they wouldn't suffer through the kick line. But it was a great experience.
All the roles that you've played on Broadway and your touring companies and the regional theaters, what have been some of your favorite roles?
I just did the national tour of Come From Away.
Oh, that's coming to Burlington. I can't wait to see it.
Burlington. Oh, it's the
in
non-union
January.
tour. The union tour that I was out with, I know, but it's the only way that they can do them. That's a whole nother
It'll be
story.
fine. It'll be fine. I just want to hear
It's
it
a
and see it
beautiful
live.
show, and I encourage you to see it.
Yes.
That was one of my all-time favorites. It's a
I
beautiful story. It's almost actor proof. You just get on that thing. It's a company of 12, and you just start and it just goes. There's no intermission. There's no break in the music. It just kind of rolls, and it's beautifully choreographed and staged and constructed. There's no wasted space, no wasted time, and you finish, and the audience just leaps to the stage. And that was one of the most exciting performances I've ever
So
got.
so why did it close on Broadway? I thought that would be one that would run forever.
And it
One of
should
those
have.
shows.
I think
Yeah.
COVID. It was when Broadway shut down for over. It was over a year, wasn't it? And they were doing extremely well. They were selling out like crazy. Once they opened, then the tourists weren't coming to New York still. So they were opening. They weren't playing to those 100% audiences, and it was just a hurry up catch up thing. And then another show came in that wanted the theater, and the producers of the show don't necessarily make that decision. The owners of the theater get to kind of make those decisions. So it just kind of slipped under the door like that, and it really is too bad, because it is a phenomenal piece, and should still be running. But
What was the last show you saw on Broadway?
the version of Doll's House that's playing right now with Chastain, Jessica Chastain.
Yes, I heard her interview the other day on the Today Show with Willie Geist. Yes.
Fascinating interpretation. It's a fascinating. It's stripped down. There are only 6 actors maybe on stage. So that was the last thing. I'm seeing Sweeney Todd on Wednesday. I recently saw Dancing on Broadway as well. I try to see something whenever I go back and forth a lot. So I'll be there this week. I'll see Sweeney Todd, which is another show I've done 5 or 6 times. I've played Pirelli on Broadway. There was a revival done with Bob Gunton and Beth Fowler. In the late 80s, was it? I get my years mixed up. And I stood by for that too, for 4 roles. And I've done 4 productions since, at Goodspeed Opera House. I've done it at in Fort Worth, Texas. 2 other places. Baltimore Center Stage. So many.
What show have you done the most productions of?
Probably Cats. I did the whole summer stock circuit over several years. I did it on Broadway. I played Gus Growltiger, and then from there, the man Richard Stafford, who was doing at that time most of the remounts in the summer, the big summer theaters, the Muni, which is in St. Louis and Kansas City, and again Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. So he would ask me to come in and do them, and they would be like a week here, a week there, 2 weeks here, sometimes a couple of months. So that's probably one of the most exhausting shows I've ever done. Yeah.
All right, now tell me about Broadway Kids Audition. Tell me about that.
Oh, so this is a fantastic organization or company that my husband Kurt Dominy started. And it's a coaching company that he's started to for ages like 7. Now it's up to 18. We're raising the age up, and it's to coach kids that are interested in theater when they've got auditions coming up. I've coached a lot of kids that were in Matilda on Broadway. All sorts of things. A lot of they get a ton of like TV auditions. So and now with Zoom we can do it. We can do it on right from here in this room. He also does he organizes workshops where he'll bring in a casting director from New York and agents. The kids can sign up and do a showcase. He coaches them on their songs and monologues. I'll coach the monologues. He'll do the songs. He's got another musical coach that will come in and accompany them. So it's a company that we also do summer workshops in New York. We'll do a week-long kind of summer camp kind of thing, which is really fantastic. There are 2 weeks that we're doing in the summer that are filling up pretty fast. It's BroadwayKidsAuditions.com, so all the dates are on there. It's been very successful. There's some of our kids that we started when they were just yay high are now in conservatories across the country, studying in college, which kind of blows my mind. It's 10 years old. The company's 10 years old, and each year it keeps revving up and does better and better and better, and it's exciting, and it's something that we can do while we pursue other things as well. Kurt also directs and he teaches up at AMDA, so in New York City. So it's a wonderful thing, and I love doing it. I love seeing the kids. I love that moment when they get it. The penny drops and they have that aha. And it's also inspiring to see kids that want to do this still.
All right, but what about stage parents? Do you have any issue with any of them?
No, they're all so. I have become friends with some of them because you do a lot of communicating with them, especially with the younger ones, because you have to do the scheduling and the preparation, and they're the ones that the work falls on them a lot. And I have never had any kind of the great thing is that they are honest when they say, I don't know what I'm doing. And why would they? I mean, it's a complicated business, and that's where we come in to help them navigate. We help them navigate everything as well. How to get an agent, how to get a manager, what's the difference between an agent and a manager? What's the difference between a TV audition and a film audition and a musical theater audition, and where do I study dance and what do I do? So you get to answer all those questions. So I'm sure there's stage moms out there that fit that stereotype, but I've been really lucky. I've just loved working with the mostly moms, but occasionally you'll get a nice dad coming in that takes over. So it's been great.
What would be your ideal call from your agent? What if he said this gig is for you? What would it be?
A series regular on a really meaty show like Succession. I mean, wow. Yeah, that would be great. But wouldn't that be wonderful? Or another show with my old buddy Meryl Streep. That would be that would be cool. Why not shoot for the top, right?
Why not? Why not? Now, before I go, I just want to let the audience know that I've met your handsome nephew, Michael. I believe he's your namesake. He owns a bar here in Burlington, and I judged his chili cook-off that he had a couple of weeks ago. So
really,
he's a great guy. It was great. It was a fun day. There was like 12, 15 entries of chili. There's probably 100 people there, and it was a successful day. But we Really
Oh.
enjoyed that. So when you come to
Mike
Burlington to visit, we have to get together.
Yeah, Mike is fantastic. He runs a great bar up there. I haven't been, so I've got to get up there and do it, and ask him to do his Button Factory soliloquy. That he still dazzles us with the memory of him doing the Button Factory when he was about 6 or 7.
I can't
Mike
wait.
Spike. Mike is famous in our family, and I know he's famous in Burlington, and I'm sending out a big hello and love to him too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us tonight, Brian. Good luck, and I can't wait to hear what your next adventure is.
Thank you, Amber. This has been wonderful, and what a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. What a fascinating life he's had. Thank you, Michael Brian Dunn. And now, Rocco's pretty interesting too.
Hey, how y'all doing? It's Rocco Zamboni. Me, that's who. Anyway, you know, sometimes people say, do you get fan mail? And I gotta say, yeah, I do. I get some letters sometimes that are crazy. But a lot of people asking me some crazy questions too. They want to get to know me better. So I thought I'd share some of these things with you. Only a couple because I think I might want to do this every now and then. Anyway, this person asked, hey, Rocco, what's your favorite movie? And I have to say, you know, are you talking non-pornographic? Because that narrows it down quite a bit. I would have to say, oh, I don't know. I like Back to the Future, Caddyshack. I'm old school, all right? You got a problem with that? What do you want me to say, Rush Hour? That was funny. Who cares? But The Godfather's probably number one. Here's another one. Hey, Rocco, do you like country music? No. All right, here's another one. Riveting, right? Hey, Rocco, if you could do anything in the world that you wanted to do, what would it be? That's simple. I'd be sitting on some sort of luxury liner, cruising down a river in Venice, sipping on some champagne with a couple of special ladies. And by special, I mean hot and easy. And then I'd be like, hey, this is pretty good. I think I can go for some ravioli right now. So, these are the kind of letters I'm getting. I think we could do better. But, you know, if you got any fan mail or you got anything you want to ask Rocco, feel free to ask. I'd say where to send it, but I don't know how all these people got this to me. I don't know. Talk to Russell about that crap. Anyway, bye.
My rant this week is about Florida again. This week, while at a Christian private school, Governor and Trump wannabe Ron DeSantis signed several bills that further attack the gay, trans, drag communities. They included elimination of gender-affirming care, a bathroom ban, restrictions on drag shows, and the expansion of the Don't Say Gay bill that now extends to Don't Say They. Also this week, the League of United Latin American Citizens issued a travel advisory citing the recent passage of SB 1718, which, among other provisions, requires large employers to verify worker citizenships. Other groups who have issued travel advisories are the Florida Immigration Coalition and Equality Florida. The Florida chapter of the NAACP has asked their national organization to also join this list. Ramifications of these laws are already being felt. Non-citizen workers and their supporters are leaving crops in the field to rot. Construction sites are empty. Delivery trucks are refusing to move goods in and out of the state. Pride events in Wilton Manors and Tampa have restricted activities in fear of breaking the new laws. And the actions of the governor have encouraged actions such as this. In Orlando, a digital traffic sign was manipulated to read, "Kill all gays." Now, there are good people in Florida. I love South Beach and Key West. However, if DeSantis would become president, would the United States become Florida? Sometimes I think my old drag influencer had a pretty good idea.
That does it. South America, take it away.
And that's this week's rant. I want to thank our guests, Jessica Watkins and Brian Dunn, for great insight on their show business careers. See you next week with our exclusive interview with Harpy Daniels, also known as Yeoman Second Class Joshua Kelly. Have a great week. Boog and Shug, bring it on.
Watching Amber just reminded me. I have to go use the potty.